Hello, my name is Imara Jones, and I am here at the Bioneers conference as a special correspondent for FSTV to talk about how that movement, the Bioneers movement, can help heal ourselves, our planet, and our nation at a really critical time in history. And that's why I'm thrilled to be joined by Xiuhtezcatl Martinez, who is the youth director at Earth Guardians, a global organization of youth dedicated to fighting climate change. Xiuhtezcatl is also an author, written a new book called We Rise, and is also a hip-hop artist and is about to go on a speaking tour and do a whole bunch of other things. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It's really an honor to talk to you, and just an honor to your spirit, which has clearly always been there. So thank you so much. Why is Bioneers important for you?
You know, I've been coming to Bioneers for the last 3 or 4 years. Every year it grows, and I see the impact increasing as well because I'm actually, last year they asked me to be on the board of Bioneers, so I'm now actually an active board member. What I really love to see in situations and spaces like this is inclusivity for young people and a diverse array of perspectives of all people having access to this kind of information and these kind of conversations. When I was a little kid and I started getting involved in environmentalism, it was a very kind of stale, well, you know, it was a very white movement, and there wasn't a lot of diversity as far as ideas, and there wasn't any kids my age engaged. So now that I can come to Bioneers and see that, you know, there's a massive percentage of youth that come, lots of indigenous and youth of color that come on scholarship. There are more, you know, arts programs involved to get youth engaged. It's very, very exciting for me to see how it's progressed. So I think Bioneers has a really great perspective of kind of whole systems approach of how do we shift things by doing things a little bit differently than they've been done in the past. And, you know, including that really great perspective of diversity, I think is part of that.
Now, you're on the boards, and are you drinking age yet? I think you're 17.
17.
Okay, so what do you think? I mean, it says something about Bioneers that they would put a 17-year-old on the board. I mean, when they asked you, what did you think?
At first I was like, wow, I have a lot of things on my plate already. And the second reaction was just like, this is exactly what we need to be seeing in the world of advocacy, of sustainability, of you know, evolutionary consciousness. Like the fact that young people are being included in this conversation says something about the way that these kind of social movements are going to help shape culture and shape the world, versus a political system that doesn't often value the voices of young people, doesn't often value the participation of youth. So I really think this is a model for corporations, for businesses, for you know, political atmospheres of where we can really see more young people getting engaged at a varying different amount of levels. You know, there's power in that, and how do we capture that and galvanize it? And obviously not all youth are going to be involved at you know, the level of being on the board, but everybody has a part to play. How do we celebrate that?
Now, besides the obvious that climate change will continue to get worse over time, so the younger you are, the worse you're going to experience it, right? That's just a basic fact. What do you think is the important role that youth have in actually playing a role in fighting climate change?
You know, I think for us, we're not politically invested. As far speaking for myself, I am not of the age to vote yet.
Or drink.
Or drink, either of the two. So me and my peers, you know, we're not voting. We don't really have a say in the politics of it. So we're not politically invested. We're not really financially invested in climate change. For us, our approach is very innocent in the way that I see it. It is about our future. It is about our planet. It is about the greater good of our communities and our global community. You know, in the growth and in the just the pursuing of the best future that we see for ourselves and for future generations. As young people, we have a lot of power. We have a lot of new innovation, ideas, creativity that older generations haven't brought to the table. And I think that as young people, we really need to begin to explore what it looks like to bring together an intergenerational movement. People from all backgrounds, people from all generations.
Yeah, it's the pure voice, right, that somehow attracts people. Now, speaking of pure voices, the first time you used your voice in fighting climate change, you were 6 years old.
Yeah.
A mere 11 years ago. What led you to that moment, first of all, of being 6 and feeling compelled or a need to speak out? And what did you feel in that moment when you were doing it? It had to be a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
I mean, in your very, very young life.
Definitely. What led to that moment was just like a full sense of just despair and anger, and like, what? How can we live our lives every day? Literally, like, my thought process was, how can people live their lives every day, go to work, go to school, like just go through the phases of life without thinking about these issues, without thinking about the extinction of a species,
Right.
you know, at such a great scale, or the melting of our ice caps, or the destruction of our environment.
Right.
And I said, I want to be a voice and I want to talk about it. That was,
Yeah.
I literally told my mom, I want to talk about this. Can you help me?
Yeah.
And her being involved in advocacy, in her past with the Earth Guardian movement, she set it up so I could get onto a stage and talk about these issues in this movement. And when I got onto a stage, I don't know if I was actually even nervous, because I really knew what I wanted to say, you know, and I had planned it out, and my mom helped me write my speech, and it was, I spent time memorizing it, and I looked into the audience, and I had a message for the adults specifically. We got to teach our children to love the earth. You know, we got to teach our children to see the earth as sacred, because then we want to protect it. We protect what we love. We fight for what we love. And yeah, it was definitely a turning point. And from then on, it's been just like this continuation of of what started at a very young age.
One of the things that is a key part of the message of Bioneers, of course, is that there's an inherent intelligence in nature that we're connected to, that if we tap into on a regular basis will be actually the saving grace, quite literally, right? We will find it in ourselves to live in balance with the world around us. And one of the interesting things is that a lot of times children have that instinctively, right? And somehow that gets taken out of them. So what's interesting about what you said is that we have to teach youth to learn how to love the planet, but I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about the ways in which we teach youth not to learn the planet, right?
Right, exactly. I think it's the conversation has a lot to do with, you know, where is that point where we stop using our imagination, where we stop feeling connected to nature, where we stop like dreaming, you know, different things like that. And I think that really influences our connection to the world, and our connection to the world influences the way that we respond and the empathy that we have for environmental problems. So I just think you're spot on in the way that you approach that. It's rather than teaching kids how to learn to love it, I think you're exactly right. It is innate within us as human beings to have a connection to the earth. As human beings, you know, myself as an indigenous person, I think part of indigeneity and being indigenous, the one thing we all share is we're all indigenous to the earth, you know, and that gives us a connection to the fact that we live and we breathe and we survive and we on the same planet, you know, and that is what connects us, and that's what needs to connect the movement in that same way.
Now, your father is Aztec, is that correct? One of the interesting things about the Aztec culture is that it's one of the most advanced civilizations ever to have been on the face of the planet. You know, 250,000 people lived in Tenochtitlan, you know, in Mexico City now. But it lived in balance with nature, right? So it was complex and balanced. So I'm wondering what you think that part of your heritage has to teach us about the lessons of doing that, and was that a part of your upbringing? That is to say, the need to live in balance with nature.
Yeah, this idea of activism was really interesting because my mom was an activist, but my dad was, where his engagement and his involvement came from was just as a place, as it was part of his identity to fight to protect the earth and the land. And as an indigenous person, it is innate within us to fight to protect our space in our land and our culture, our language. And the earth was such a part of that. You know, in growing up, my father taught me, you know, that every time we're in nature, you know, we give thanks for the fact that the sun is out right now, you know, and those simple teachings from a very young age, when I was learning how to speak and crawl and eat, being taught that the earth was a sacred part of our existence.
Right.
That was a perspective that helped me understand we have to return to a lot of these, you know, older indigenous forms of thinking to the world if we want to progress forward in the future.
Right.
Yes, we want to continue to grow and develop our economies. We want to continue to grow and develop our cities. We want to pursue new technologies. We want to cure diseases. We want to reach space in whole new ways. But also, how can we do that in a way that is honoring the fact that our resources are finite, that our planet is the only one that we have right now that can sustain life, and that what we do to this web of life is going to come back to us.
That's right, because we're a part of it. So you're the youth director of Earth Guardians. What are some of the things that compels you to do that? Is to say, what are the things that, as a youth organizer in the climate change movement, that you're most focused on in terms of youth and youth activities around the world?
Earth Guardians works as kind of a decentralized action and support network. So we have hundreds of different crews that are individually focused on their community issues in like 35, 40 different countries. And the movement has just blown up over the last 3 years because of how much young people see the value in empowering youth to use their voice in their community. Youth a lot of people, I feel, give us a bad rap as a younger generation for like being really apathetic and disconnected and always on our phone. And while some of those things are true, there are a lot of young people that are searching for a way to plug in but don't have an outlet. They don't have a platform. So Earth Guardians is working to build a platform in a way that looks at how can we inspire young people to use their passion, the things that they love to do, to engage. It's not about all of us being activists or all of us being spokespeople. It's about, you know, whether we are interested in theater or science, or, you know, we're entrepreneurs or hip hop artists. Like, these different methods are avenues to creating change, and we can bring this ideology of making change into what we already love to do. So that's a big focus of Earth Guardians, is how can we support the creative passion, and that's translated itself into, you know, different theater performances all across India, where young people wrote these plays and these scripts, where then they were performing to dozens of young people in their communities all over the place, teaching about water sanitation and potability, and like for one of the huge days of actions that we had, where thousands of young people were doing projects around protecting our water. Not all of it was going and cleaning up the beach, but we got creative with the tactics, in the same way that I'm using hip hop as a way to tell a story, to talk about these issues, and to change the way that we see this problem. We have to diversify the tactics, and I think with Earth Guardians, that whole message has been, how can we uplift the existence of where young people are at.
Earlier today, I talked to DJ Kevin, who is your homie. And I'm wondering what you think. He gave an answer, and I'm curious about yours, because I'm sure it'll be slightly different. What do you think is the role of hip hop in climate change and climate justice?
I think if you look back historically, hip hop has always been a voice for the oppressed. Hip hop has been a method of communication and storytelling. And at this point in time, you know, just from really focusing this last year on putting together this album called Break Free that I'm going to be releasing in early 2018, using it as a way to talk about this, and kind of being able to take off that mask of being an activist has been like super therapeutic and really real. And my experience with it is seeing that hip hop is this language that, if we're telling the right stories, the people are listening already. The people are listening to hip hop already. And if we are telling the right stories through it, then we can reach a whole audience of people that are asleep right now. Wake people up in a way that no one's you know, tuning into. And so the first thing is just change the way we're reaching the masses, and the second thing is turn this activist movement, this climate justice, social justice movement, from kind of this resistance, these protests, these marches, turn that into celebration, block parties, and concerts, you know?
Right, make it fun.
Exactly. And it's like, how do we make that appealing to the masses and get people to not just want to protest a pipeline, but come together and celebrate the world we know is possible, celebrate, you know, equality on all levels for all people, you know, and turn that into this, like, I think hip hop can really be a catalyst for changing the way that we do that. In my personal experience, when I get into a stage at a conference or at a rally in a protest and I'm spitting bars, people are like, whoa, I came here to like march with, you know, my picket sign, and now all of a sudden people are rapping about it. That's different. That's like changing things. So I think it changes the medium of how we reach the masses, and it turns it from a culture of resistance, protest, and marching to celebration and music and art, and like that's the human part of us that wants to participate in dancing, singing, coming together, you know. I think it's very human of us to use music to connect, and now more than ever we need that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because my mom was involved in civil rights in the South, and one of the things that she remarked upon was that for youth, one of the reasons why they got involved is because they made the events fun. That is to say that, like, it was a way for them to get together. There was usually music, like there was a lot of kinship and socialization that was a part of it, that that the protest was the last thing that they did. Right?
Wow.
It was it was the end of everything else. And so I think that there's a lot of wisdom in what you say, and trying to transform this to engage more younger people by making it fun.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about shifting culture. You know?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's because that's the entryway into the mind, into our habits. So there's hip hop, there's activism, speaking on stages, and you also just wrote a book. Why'd you decide to do that?
A publisher approached me and said, we want to write a book with you. And I was like,
that's a good reason.
Let's do it, you know. And And I think that the opportunity that arose from it, I've been wanting to do something similar to this for a while. What the book is called We Rise, and what it is it's a comprehensive overview of the state of the planet, looking at incredibly critical social, environmental, climate, economic, and political issues through the lens of climate change. Climate change is the lens in which we view all these other issues, from food justice to racial justice to indigenous sovereignty. Climate change is the lens in which we're looking at these problems with this perspective of how do we create the solutions and empower a generation to fight for change. So it's not a biography, it is where's the world at and what are the steps we are going to need to take to find the solution. So every chapter has a call to action. The whole book is a call to action. You should keep it with you when you're organizing, you're protesting, or you're leading, and this can be helpful for you. And I have a whole chapter on music, talking about how music can get involved, whole chapters on food justice and the oceans. So the reason that I chose to write this book partly was as a response to the anger and the hatred and the division that came out of Trump's election. And when we look at that, even as the liberal movement, or whatever you want to call it, people that oppose the Trump, that oppose Trump and his views and his policies, it was a lot of anger, and a lot of people showed up even for the Women's March. There were millions of people in the streets all over the place. That was a beautiful thing to see. But where was the call to action, and what are the next steps? And we can get in the streets and yell "F Trump" all we want, but where is the action that comes out of that? So this is really like trying to put that action into the hands of people when they purchase this at the store.
Right,
And,
like a roadmap, is it? Seems
exactly.
like a handbook, is that right?
That's what the intention of it is, fully.
On this issue of Trump and the government and frustration with the government, one of the ways in which youth have come together to fight climate change is through a really innovative lawsuit. And I'm wondering that if you could share that with our audience, that it's to say what that lawsuit is about and why young people.
Myself and 20 other youth are suing the Trump administration for violating our constitutional rights to life, liberty, and property, for failing to act on climate change, for failing to adequately protect our constitutional rights from this issue, from working directly with the fossil fuel corporations to conceal this issue. There is a level of accountability that our government has responsible to its constituents, and for us as youth, it is us asserting our democracy in an absence of that leadership from our elected officials and from our president and the administration. This lawsuit was filed originally against the Obama administration. So even Obama wasn't doing enough. He sat complacent through several different things that happened, where all of a sudden our federal lands are under attack from fossil fuel extraction. The Arctic is under attack from fossil fuel extraction. It's a lawsuit that brings together the stories of these 21 youth plaintiffs, the youngest being a 9-year-old named Levi from Florida.
Wow.
And each of us has our own story of how we are personally being impacted by climate change, and that is evidence in our lawsuit. And the second piece of it is a legal piece, young people getting involved in the legal process and in the legal system, which is, again, a different tactic that we haven't really seen before when it comes to climate change. And the third piece is the science. We're working with top climate scientists to build a prescription for a climate recovery plan to implement nationwide. So if we win the lawsuit, it'll be a nationwide climate recovery plan, which we'll have to massively reforest the United States. We will have to cut our greenhouse gas output by cutting fossil fuel extraction and development, transition towards renewable energies really quickly. It'll put fire under the feet of the people that are at these really high places of leadership that aren't making the right decisions on behalf of our generation.
What's the status of that? Like, in what circuit is it, and what's been like the legal battles that you've had? Because I think at one point there have been all these motions to dismiss. So
initially when we filed it, there was a motion to dismiss filed by the federal government and by several different fossil fuel corporations that signed on, and it was on. We didn't have standing. We didn't have grounds in the lawsuit. That was the motion to dismiss was based off that, and
meaning you haven't been harmed, so you can't sue. Basically, is what they're saying.
Yeah, and part of what that looked like is that once we went to court in front of two different federal judges to hear the decision about, or kind of to have this trial on the motion to dismiss, they sided in our favor. Two different federal judges ruled in our favor, and they then gave us our trial, our day in court. It's currently in the District Federal Court in Eugene, Oregon. We're going to be going to see our trial day in early 2018. So we're incredibly excited about that, and just the fact that it's made that much progress is just. I mean, this could be one of the trials of the century. This could be the trial of the century, and it's going to be one of the most important in court cases because it's one of the most important issues, and we're excited about the potential of it moving forward.
Right, and I mean, I know that they were involved in pushing back, but between the federal government and the fossil fuel industries, has there been one of those that's been pushing back harder, or you think, I'm wondering who's leading the charge against the lawsuit?
The federal government. And the fossil fuel corporations actually signed off as have removed themselves from the lawsuit as defendants.
Oh, wow.
After we won, and we got our day in court, they removed themselves as defendants in the case because of the amount of evidence we would be able to dig up on them.
Yeah, because of discovery. This also reminds me of something that Bill McKibben told me a couple of months ago, which is that he says that secretly he believes that the fossil fuel industry knows that the gig is up for them and that they're just playing for time. And your lawsuit, the way that they behave in your lawsuit might underscore that. That's kind of an interesting thing that they decided to just pull out because they know that eventually at some point the gig is going to be up.
Definitely.
It's just playing for time. So in a weird way, time may be on your side. Well, in a lot of ways it is, but I mean in terms of climate change. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I think we're running down the clock. You had an incredibly busy schedule in a leadership role here and also as an Indigenous person with that program and as a youth organizer. So really wanted to appreciate the time that you took to talk to us and to just honor you for your work and for who you are. It's you and all the people that you're in connection with will possibly save us, so thank you.
Yeah, we're working on it. We all got a piece to play. Thank you for helping give me the platform.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, so go find Xiuhtezcatl on all the different social medias. By We Rise. Look for the album. When's the album coming out?
Early 2018.
Early 2018. There's lots of ways to connect, and also is on the Bioneers board, so you can go to bioneers.org and find out more there as well. Thank you all for taking the time to join us here on FSTV, and we'll see you soon.